first memory that I have, probably one of my favorites, and I had to be probably no more than 4 years old because it was in the house in Kearns and we moved to West Bountiful when I was 5. So, but I remember just riding down the driveway one day on my trike and getting my toes stuck in the spokes of the trike, and I got hurt pretty bad. And I remember Dad coming to the rescue and giving me a few band-aids and fixing it up and giving me an orange popsicle to make me feel better. And I can remember it really well, and I think it's pretty crazy that I was that young, but I remember it, and I think I knew from that time on that he would always be there to take care of me, and he has been. Another memory that I have is this bracelet that he gave me over the years. He started when I was 14 and put a charm on it and gave me many charms over the years for when I started driving, when I got married, when I got my patriarchal blessing, when I graduated, not in that order, but anyway. So I've got a lot of memories in it for all the times that he gave me those.
So I think one of my favorite memories of Dad, when I was 11 or 12, I stayed home from school sick one day, which I didn't do very often, and I wasn't really sick, I just didn't feel very good. And I remember going downstairs and I was watching him work in the basement. It was during the time that he just retired from the FBI, but he hadn't started working for the U.S. Attorney's Office yet. He had like a year off, and he was remodeling the basement. So I remember going downstairs and watching him work down there, and he needed to go buy some more paint, so he asked me if I wanted to go with him, so I said sure. So we hopped in the truck and drove into Salt Lake to his favorite paint store. This was back before Home Depot and Lowe's were around. I think it was called Bennett's, and it was in Salt Lake, and that's where he always got his paint. And so we drove to Bennett's and picked up his paint, and after we left the paint store, he showed me around all the places where he lived in Salt Lake and where his house was and all the places that he used to hang out with his friends, and all of his old stomping grounds in Salt Lake. And then he took me to lunch, and we went and got a burger and milkshake, and it was just really fun to spend that time with him, just one-on-one, doing something fun. And then when we got home, we acted like it was business as usual. We didn't tell anybody what we'd been doing all day. It was just a stay at home from school sick day, and Dad worked in the basement, and that was that, and we never told anybody. And it was just fun because those kind of things didn't happen very often, so when they did, they were extra special and meaningful. I've always remembered that. Getting to see a side of him that I didn't get to see very often, that's always stuck with me.
It's really hard to come up with a favorite memory of Dad, but I think one of the things I will always remember is how he acted around babies. He loved babies, and even when he saw M's new baby just soon before he passed away, he was talking to that baby just like he always did. I will always probably remember his gift with babies. I could come up with a favorite memory. I have lots of memories.
I'm gonna miss since we have a blended family, we have an off year for Thanksgiving every other year, and so we looked forward to the Thanksgivings that we could go and spend with Mom and Dad. And the first year we did that, I took a tradition of my own family's of playing bingo, and I would take over these stupid crap dollar prizes, and Carl was always really great about putting the stupid stuff on or playing the dumb game, and we have pictures, and I'll just always remember that he just humored me. I'm gonna miss his sense of humor.
I remember him when I was little. He had the red motorcycle, and he would take us for rides, and it was so fun. It felt like we were so cool. One special memory I have that stands out is when I was probably about 9 or 10. Behind his office there was a repair shop that would repair the police cars and different things. And at one point, the emergency rescue truck from Emergency 51, one of the popular TV shows that I liked, had been brought in for repair. And he came home that afternoon and said he had a surprise to show me, and he just had me just come, and I just went barefoot just as I was, and he took me out to Salt Lake to the repair shop to show me this rescue truck. And I remember we pulled up, and I didn't have shoes on or anything because I'd just gone like I was, and I was too embarrassed because I had eczema on my feet most of my life, and I didn't want to get out of the truck. And he says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you, I'll protect you so that nobody will see." And he picked me up and wrapped my feet around his back so that I wouldn't be embarrassed. And he took me over to the truck and let me look in and see all the different instruments and all the things that were in the truck. And I just remember how special it was that he was concerned about my embarrassment and that I wasn't worried and scared. And we used to, when he took a photography class, he used to take me and take pictures of me at different places for part of that, and that was fun to just go, just the two of us. I think one of the other more special memories is when him and Mom would pull out all the stops for Christmas, especially the Christmas decorations outside. The lights just were incredible every year, and became a really special memory because you could see them from the overpass, and you could I remember kids at school would say we could see your house from the school and stuff like that because they were so decorated. And him and Mom would always make Christmas so special. It was just like a magical wonderland. Especially walking in Christmas morning, it was beautiful.
Probably the most memorable time I had with Dad was when I was in high school and we hadn't done much camping, and that was something I really wanted to do and had really an ache to do. And he borrowed a trailer from one of his counselors in the bishopric, and we went up to the Uintas to Pine Valley, and we spent a week on the banks of the Provo River. And I just remember we'd never done anything like that before, never stayed in a trailer like that before, and it was memorable to me. We fished together. I kind of taught him how to use a spinner on a river. I'd done a little of that, and just had a ball watching him catch fish and things that we had never really just done, the two of us. And I just remember that week as a very impactful and fun week. And I think probably Mike and Tammy and Tyler were probably there. I don't remember that much. I spent the whole week fishing, so that's the kind of the highlight of that experience. But I remember the one Saturday morning, I remember they took us to Mirror Lake, and it was like we woke up and it was like, let's go now, and we just threw everything together and went. It was kind of how the deer hunts were. It's just like Friday night at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you didn't think you were going, and by 5, Howard was trying to register the ranchero and put the camper on there that should have never been on a ranchero, and we were off to some far-flung place to walk around the woods, which was like the celestial kingdom to me. But I remember those things most of all.
One of the things that I can remember is this. He'd come home from work. I know it was just about every day that he had this little stubbly 5 o'clock shadow kind of thing, and we'd sit on his lap. I remember Beth and I would sit on his lap, and he'd have the scratchy beard. You could feel it against our face. And I remember the way he smelled with Old Spice. I remember every time you asked Dad what he was doing, especially outside, he'd be working on some project, gardening, whatever it was, fixing a light, and you'd ask him what he was doing, and his famous always answer was playing house. He never told you what he was actually doing, he just playing house. I remember going camping and fishing with Dad. I remember the times that we had frank conversations with each other about things that were going on in my life, things that I needed advice on. I remember Dad had a great testimony of the gospel and of Jesus Christ. I remember that he loved Mom's cooking as long as the carrots weren't overcooked or undercooked. We're still not sure where in between they're cooked right.
I guess my favorite memories of Dad growing up were probably Deer hunting trips. I remember we went all week talking how we weren't going to go deer hunting. And then Friday when I get home from school, there was all the gear piled all over the hallways. We rushed through to get everything ready to go deer hunting. But I think probably my ultimate memory is, Dad was always big on getting up early Saturday and working out in the yard. And you'd work hard until about noon and then come in and have lunch and sit and watch the ball game and take a nap. But I remember one day as I was getting ready for junior high and Dad asked me to stay home from school for the day and help him pour concrete out by the side of the garage. And I think that was my all-time favorite day working with Dad, was just the two of us out pouring concrete all day.
I remember a time when we went up to Melissa's cabin for a summer vacation. We took Dad and Mom with us. And while we were up there sitting on the patio, Melissa's uncle came down and started working in the yard to lay some sprinkler pipe. And we were just there on vacation, relaxing and doing our thing. And without saying a word, Dad got up and got some work gloves. I don't know why he had work gloves on vacation, but he did. And went out and started moving rocks so that her uncle could lay that pipe. And of course I followed him. And we, spent 15, 20 minutes getting that out of the way. And it just wasn't even anything we talked about, just something he did. And that's how he always was. If he wasn't moving, if he wasn't working, he wasn't living. And we all saw that. We all grew up, and it drove us crazy. Saturday it was a 12 to 16 hour ordeal every Saturday to do the chores. But nevertheless, everything that I do now in my own yard, in my garage, whatever, Dad taught me to do it. I remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were on the patio talking about parenting, and he told me, he said, Mike, don't do it the way that I did it. Because I thought, ruling with an iron fist was the way that you did it. And I wasn't here to be your friend, I was here to be your dad. Your father would be the better word for it. He says, don't do it that way. When you have to correct your kids, do it gently, do it with love. You don't have to hurt them. You don't have to push them to the point that they feel pain or that they feel anger. And that's kind of how Dad did it sometimes. But he sat me down and told me that is not the way he wants me to raise my family, and to do it with love and patience. And I've never forgotten that either. And while my parenting style or any of ours may be different from Dad's, it was because of that. Not out of spite, but because of his guidance, and he was able to tell us some of the pitfalls that he encountered as a parent. And I absolutely think he did the best with what he had.
He did have a goofy side.
And he did.
Kevin, do you remember when he was dancing?
No.
Yeah. He had these baggy sweatshirts on, and he had this goofy hat that didn't fit quite right. It just sat on the top of his head, and he was dancing around. And I've never seen your dad act like that. I just was like speechless.
The first time I ever saw my dad dance was at my wedding with you. And I didn't know what I was witnessing. That he was out on the floor, and he knew what he was doing. He was good at it. He was good at it. But he did have a fun side. When he could let go and relax, he was a lot of fun. And those are some really, really fond memories that I'll have forever.
One of my favorite memories from Papa is that when I was little, like I was 6-ish, we would go to his house every Sunday and we'd visit him. We'd talk to him and it was fun.
Whenever I went to visit Grandpa, he would always take me into his bedroom every time I went and make a note and point out this picture of little baby me with this teddy bear that I still have, that I think he gave to me. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but he had it sitting next to his bed, and it's been there like since we gave it to him when I was like a baby, and it's never moved. And every time I went to see him, he would take me into his room and be like, look, I still have this picture here. It's of you. I don't have any of the other pictures of like anybody. And I always thought it was so cute how excited he was to show me, and that he like loved me that much to have that picture next to his bed.
I used to share the holidays with him, especially Halloween, and showing him my costumes.
One of my favorite memories about Grandpa was when we came over and we were talking about the kids when they were little, and he was telling us stories about the kids, and he said one of the most candid answers for any kid to say to him was, "I don't know." And so then he kind of went on like a rant, and he started to go through different scenarios, and he would say things like the kids would say, "Why are you sitting there?" He'd be like, "I don't know." "Why did you break this?" "I don't know." "Why are you eating that?" "I don't know." He's like, "I swear, that's all I ever got." And after about 20 examples, it just kept getting funnier and funnier, and that's one of my favorite memories.
I would say my favorite memory about Grandpa was that he came for haircuts every 3 weeks for, I don't know, almost 10 years. And people would ask me, how's that going? How's cutting Grandpa's hair? And I would say fine. And sometimes I would get, was he in a good mood? And I had the blessing of always seeing Grandpa in a good mood. And I don't know how that happened, or if I was just on his good side because he knew that I was the one with the scissors in my hand. But he always was in a good mood, and we would talk and we would visit. Sometimes he'd come with Grandma, and sometimes he hardly would come together, and we would always just get to visit for, his haircuts usually lasted an hour. So I think that's what I've missed since I moved, and what I'll continue to miss is that time that I was able to spend with him cutting his hair. And I will miss getting to touch base with him and talk to him about things, and learn about his life, and him ask questions about mine, and just have that relationship with him that I'll forever be grateful for.
My favorite memory about Papa was that he always came over for breakfast every Christmas.
One of my favorite memories is, I'm usually late to the party in many circumstances, but with this situation, Grandpa beat me to the punch. And I finally realized one time when we were all sitting down that he was mayor. So I said, "Grandpa, you were mayor?" And he gave me the biggest eye roll, knowing that I had probably heard this already. And he told me to go look at the awards in his trophy case and go take a look at all the stuff that he's done. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And I came back and he told me about the Olympics and all the little stuff that he did and the big stuff that he did for West Bountiful. And I thought that was really cool.
My favorite memory of Carl, I think one of the things that I most remember is actually when I asked Beth to marry me. That obviously I'd never done it before. I was really nervous. And I went over, I made up an excuse to go over and talk to him rather than go see Beth. And he could tell, I think he knew what was going on. He could tell I was nervous, but I asked him for his blessing, and he just told me that he knew how much I loved Beth, and he knew how much she loved me, and that as long as we loved each other, then that would be okay.
So one of the memories I have of Grandpa is I must have been 5 or 6, and we were camping up in the Uintas. And I remember we were playing horseshoes, and I was on his team. It must have been me and him against whoever. And I know we played a bunch of matches, and I'm pretty confident we won them all. But I just remember being on his team and how much I liked to be on his team, and we had a lot of fun with it. Another thing more recent, and when Grandpa would come and get his hair cut at our house, he would always get down on the ground with the kids and the babies to play with them and to talk to them. And usually I thought to myself, I don't know how he's gonna get up, because I'm not sure how he got down there. Another funny thing from when he would come and get his hair cut is he left one time and called back later that day and asked if McKaylee had permed his hair, because he had a wave kind of right here, probably the wave we've seen his whole life, but he thought that she must have permed his hair, and she definitely didn't put any rods in or anything, and so I'm not sure where that thought came from.
I think one of my most memorable memories I have of him is when during Christmas time I have a choir performing group that I perform with, and basically we kind of like dress up like an old time Christmas caroling group, and it was kind of funny because I had a performance and I was going straight to Grandpa's right after that, so I was already like all my costume and everything, and Grandpa had his bunny costume on, his bunny onesie, and my mom kind of looked like Cruella de Vil. And so it was kind of funny because it was like we got Halloween, Easter, Christmas, just like a whole holiday palooza, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? It's just like all the holidays threw up on his house, and we're like, what is happening? But it is a funny memory. Yeah.
Something that I will always remember about Grandpa is how anytime we'd come over and visit him, he would have me sit on his lap so he could sing this Goofy song every time without fail. And even as I got bigger and way taller and way too big to sit on his lap, he would still have me sit down so he could sing that song, and he did it without fail every single time.
Is when me and Josh, I think 2 summers ago, we went and stayed with Grandma and Grandpa for a couple days, and it was Sunday, and me and Grandpa went out, and we just sat in their backyard, and we were cooking dinner, and we just talked, and he made a lot of jokes, and he just was telling me stories, and that's just one of my favorite memories of him.
One thing I always remember about Grandpa is that we would always go to help him out with his house when he couldn't do it all by himself, me and my dad, and we would help him mow his lawn and do some yard work, and I really liked that. It was kind of nice to go talk to him, get to bond a little bit with him, with my dad a little bit more, working over there, and I have a lot of good memories just working around his house. I think one of the funny stories about Grandpa is one time when we went camping, and he was camping with us. I mean, you all know how Grandpa is, but one time, this is classic Grandpa. My mom hadn't gotten dinner ready yet, and he wanted to eat, and he was hungry, and he got super bugged because it wasn't ready when he wanted it, and so he didn't eat for the entire night. He was just bugged in his trailer, didn't come out, and my mom felt super bad because that's just how she is. But it was that was kind of a funny experience.
I remember you saying that he used to be sort of mean, but then when he saw me and what?
Just keep going.
But when he saw me and Charlie, he sort of became nice.
Yeah, it's funny. Grandpa Martin was. I have never seen someone transform more around babies than he did. Because
Yeah.
I was scared of him when I was a kid, because he always seemed so grumpy. But when he had babies with him, he just turned into this complete marshmallow. One of my favorite memories, actually, was from quite recently. It was, I think, just in February. My mom and I were going to go out to lunch with Grandma. Grandma wasn't feeling up to it, but I went inside and talked to Grandpa for a few minutes, and we haven't really ever had a whole lot of one-on-one time together, but I was in there talking to him for a few minutes, and our dog Trooper died in September, and Harley had just died like a couple weeks before I sat with him and visited him for a minute, and so we had a really nice talk, just talking about the dogs and that we missed them, and he was showing me all the different things that all his kids had brought to kind of comfort him. Like, I think my mom had brought him a stuffed animal, and I think it was Beth that got him like a little, kind of like a robotic dog that looked like it was sleeping, and like it actually moved like it was breathing, and he had that on his bed, and he had just all these things all over his room he could see them, and he said they did make him feel a little better.
My favorite memory of Papa is when the Sunday before he died, me and my brother Spencer got to give him the sacrament for the last time, and that was really special to me.
One thing I remember about Great Grandpa is when I was a little boy and he'd come down to the salon and getting his hair cut, I would always play with his cane and he always poked me with it.
My favorite memory of Grandpa is when we went on the trip to Calgary together, and we went through the airport and got up to Calgary, and we're going through immigration, and at that point we found out that I hadn't taken the correct birth certificate and Grandma and Grandpa had no documentation at all. So they escorted us into the immigration room, where we tried to explain how I ended up with my brother Matt's birth certificate, and Grandma and Grandpa had some what appeared to be coupons with their names on them, and so it took us a few hours to work through to have them believe that we were just coming on vacation, but that was a fun experience together.
My favorite memory about Papa is probably that when my brothers would go over to mow the lawn for him, he would pause the TV and ask me to come sit by him, and he would tell me lots of stories.
So my memory of Grandpa was just how inclusive he was. I remember when I was starting to date Brooke way back when, how welcoming he was, and he always was very kind to me. One of my first memories of meeting him was when we went to the Halloween party when I was dating Brooke, and we had it in his garage, and he was just always very proactive to come talk to me and very conversational and really put me at ease and made me feel as part of the family. So I think for me that was the thing that stuck with me the most throughout the years.
So when I was in 6th grade, I wanted to play the violin, and I remember going to Grandpa's house, and he had a violin that used to be his mom's that he gave me. And when I started playing again as an adult, I had that same violin that I played on, and Grandpa came to my first recital as an adult. And I just remember after going up to him, and he gave me a huge hug and told me how proud he was of me and how neat he thought it was that I was playing on his mom's violin. And he just told me how much he loved me, and he was very sincere and very genuine, and I could tell how proud he was of me, and it just made me feel really good. And I'll just never forget that because of Grandpa, I started playing the violin, and I still do, and I love it.
If I have any one memory that's my favorite of Grandpa, but one that stands out to me is when I was 8, when I just gotten baptized. He and Grandma actually gave me my very first set of personal scriptures. That was a really big important memory for me.
When him and Grandma were serving their mission in Canada, everybody drove up or flew in, I'm not sure, and surprised them at their big 50th anniversary party, and that was really fun. Just to see the impact they had on people in their short time in Canada, how many friends they'd made and how many lives they'd influenced. And it was what we already knew, but we knew how influential Grandma and Grandpa were, and that was really fun. I think my love of sports and my, probably my overly crazy love of sports kind of stems from my dad, and that definitely stems from Grandpa. Even when Grandpa and I last talked a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the Utes and the Jazz, and I know Grandpa loved baseball, and that's definitely where sports is definitely one of the things we've always connected with.
When I was younger, Grandpa came to my birthday, and he gave me this silver dollar, which is one of my favorite memories because I never really had something like that. And it was really special because he told me stories about it.
Some of my favorite memories about Dad are the trips that we took with them. We took them and went on a cruise to Catalina Island in Mexico, and the first day we got there, we all went up on the top of the boat, and we got to be up there waiting to leave, and Mom and Dad just got themselves some reclining chairs, and they were laying out. They were going to get themselves a suntan, and they were so excited to be on a cruise ship. And we had a really fun trip with them. And then just camping with them has been fun. I can remember Dad sitting on Butterfly Lake and catching a fish, and he was pretty excited that he'd caught a fish that day. And then our yearly trips down to Tuacahn, where we rode with Mom and Dad in the car and went to the plays and had dinner, and we ate at either George's Cafe or Black Bear Diner, and they loved going to both of those places, and we made some really fun memories. Some other things that I remember was when Blake was a baby, I had a meeting at the church, and Dad offered to help tend him, which kind of actually shocked me, but we all know he loved babies. And What he didn't know was how fussy of a baby Blake was, and so I went to the meeting. We didn't have cell phones at that time, so he couldn't get a hold of me. But apparently Blake had been crying quite a bit by the time I got home, and he did a really good job though of taking care of him, not getting frustrated, which I was kind of surprised, but he just did the best to take care of him and was probably glad to see me on the way out the door with him.
And I was talking with the girls, and one of their favorite memories was this past Christmas, when they thought it was really funny when Grandpa came out in the pink bunny costume from the Christmas Story and gave out little presents to them. And one of my fondest memories I have with Grandpa was, I knew every time I was over there, we were always going to have a conversation either about the Giants or the 49ers, and how fun it was always to have those conversations with him. And I'm really going to miss having those conversations when I'm around him. And being able to hear his stories and hear his thoughts was always a favorite thing of mine.
Miss you, Grandpa. Miss getting to talk to you and hear all your stories about the amazing life you had. I'm so glad you got to meet my Tony before you went, and seeing you bond with him right away made me even more sure that I found the right one. We love you so much, Grandpa.
One of my favorite memories with Grandpa is when I went over to tell him and Grandma that I was going on a mission. They were both so excited, and he was so excited he wanted to buy me my mission bag, and so he's like, well, here's my credit card, and when you find one, just punch in the numbers. And so and that bag lasted my whole mission. I still have it, actually. It was great. And when I got home from my mission, I went over and talked with him and Grandma, and we just shared stories about my mission, and they went off about their mission in Canada and his own mission. And I just loved how much he loved to talk about his mission and their mission together, and just how service-oriented he is. And it was just always so fun to talk with him about his callings. He loved to talk about what he was doing. And
the night we had the night shift of taking care of him, and he wanted me to, he told me I had the medication that would help him feel better, to go get it. He wanted it for me to help him sleep. So I gave him the morphine that the hospice had told us to give him. Then the next morning, he wakes up, sits at the edge of the bed, and we ask him how he's feeling, and he says, I'm feeling groggy because I think Stephanie drugged me.
One memory that I feel like stands out above them all. I think I was 5th grade at the time. Either 5th or 6th grade, I was pretty little still. I got to go spend the day with Grandma and Grandpa while my mom was at work during summer vacation. And I got to go to Uncle Howard's farm with Grandpa all day and play cowgirl, which I thought was the coolest thing ever because I thought I was going to be a cowgirl at the time. I actually wanted a pet horse, so it was like dream come true that I got to go see and be around horses. And there was a baby that had just been born, so it was like the coolest experience. But I just remember feeling so cool. I got to play cowgirl all day, even though that was also the day I realized I had hay fever, because at the end of the day, I went home with bright red eyes and sniffling, couldn't breathe, and basically feeling miserable, but still thinking it was like the coolest day ever that I got to play cowgirl all day and go around and play cowgirl with Grandpa. So
there's a lot. My favorite probably is, so there was one summer, I can't remember, I think it was 2 summers ago, we went and we stayed at his house for like a weekend, and it was fun. I remember one day we were outside and their grass was dying in spots, and he wanted us to help him regrow the grass. And so we spent like an hour outside working and fixing the grass and just planting new stuff and putting stuff in. And I just remember he would tell us stories of stuff he had done, and that day, I just loved that day. That day was great.
Grandpa, we just wanted to say how grateful we are for your example. You were there for me growing up when I needed priesthood blessings and guidance, and I was able to stay connected to you no matter how unique my family situation was. I knew I could depend on you and Grandma's love. My mother, my sister, and myself will never forget that. I will always remember your hugs and how you wrapped me in your arms and that firm grip. Clint and I are so glad that you could be part of some big moments in our lives as we started our family. You came to our wedding and joined us as we were sealed to each other and our future daughters. You were part of their blessing days and Kennedy's baptism, and no matter how far apart we lived, you were there. I have so many moments I remember growing up and coming to visit, from your garden to your trains at Christmas, and when I was young watching General Conference in the basement, to your love of your dogs. You hold a special place in our family, and we know it is not the end, and we will see you again. Please watch over us, and we will try to make you proud. Love, Clint, Jessica, Kennedy, Lexi, and Avery.
Memory I have is when we were building our house. We lived in West Bountiful, just down the street, across the street from Howard, and we got to go to church with them every Sunday, and that was really fun for me and for my kids, and to be able to sit with them through sacrament meeting and then go to Sunday school and sit by Grandpa, and just to see how much he was loved by everybody in that ward, and everybody in general. So that was fun for me to do, and I think they enjoyed it too, and gave my kids a chance to get to know Grandpa and Grandma a little bit better, and so that was always something that I am grateful for. Another thing that memory I'm grateful for is one of the first days he got put in the hospital. My mom called and told me, and it was after my kids went to bed, so I just drove down to Lakeview, and nobody was in the room, and I went in and just stood by his bed for a minute, and I thought he was asleep, and my kids had made get well pictures. So the nurse went and found me some tape, and I was taping him up there, and I just told her I didn't want to wake him up or bug him, and she told me he wasn't asleep. So he woke up when she came in, and I just hadn't talked to him for a little while, and it was just nice to have some time with him alone by myself to talk to him about my kids and about John, and I was probably there for 45 minutes, and he was just asking how we were doing, how our yard was coming and everything, and it was just nice to have that time alone with him for a minute. And I don't know of a time when I've had just a half an hour with Grandpa by myself, and so that's something I'm really thankful for, and something that I will remember even though he wasn't in the best of health. I'm still grateful for the chance I got to spend that time with him.
Things that I will not miss are choosing gifts for him and mulling over all the options and trying to find just the right thing and hoping he'll love it, because he won't.
I'm really going to miss all our sport conversations, because even when I came over on Wednesdays and he could be really tired, and all I had to do is get him talking sports, and that perked him right up and got him going for a while and got his enthusiasm up a little bit. So
I will not miss his eating antics. Watching him put ketchup on ramen noodles, or pouring 7 different kinds of cereal into a bowl and mixing it all together. One time he took a stale muffin, put it in a cereal bowl, and poured milk over it and mixed it in with his cereal to soften it up. Those kinds of things I will not miss. I'm gonna have to pause there for a second.
We don't miss Harley.
Harley.
We never liked Harley.
Harley. I would always pet Harley's tail, and she would always bark at me. Grandpa loved Harley, and he's by me. He growls at me or bites me.
Harley, I think we all have the same stories. I'm just astounded that he was able to talk Ty into giving that dog an enema.
I won't miss giving a dog an enema.
What I'll miss most is all the stories he would tell of his life. I'm gonna miss that.
What I'll miss most probably are some of those conversations about the church with Dad. I miss hearing his experiences. Over the last few years, he continues to come up with stories that he's sure we all know and I've never heard before. I love hearing some of the stories about what he did as a kid and some of his struggles, because it makes him very human to me.
Thing I'll probably miss the most about him, I've thought about it the last few days, is his voice. I love to listen to him sing.
I will miss hearing him sing hymns during sacrament meeting. I always loved sitting by him to hear him sing. I always loved his singing voice, and I'll miss that.
The sound of his comforting voice. When I feel sad, I like to just listen to his voice when we go over.
I love to hear him sing and sing his deep voice.
I will miss not seeing his house decorated for Christmas. I will miss not seeing his yard taken care of the way he took pride in having him walk me through his garden and show me the things that he's done.
Watching him putter around his yard in his cowboy boots and sitting on the back patio with him drinking a soda water and admiring his yard. Those are good times that will stay with me forever.
Hearing him tell his stories, the big tarantula following his mom, and him and his sisters running away with their huge bottles of fruit and the things like that he used to tell us. And
things that I'll most miss about him, I think just having a friend. I really, more than I think being a father-in-law, I looked at him as just a friend, somebody who I could go and talk to. And I think he looked at me the same way, that we could just go and talk. We could talk about sports, we could talk about life, we could talk about different things. And he valued my opinion and I valued his opinion. And we, even though, sometimes we'd have a differing opinion, it just didn't matter. We could still enjoy each other's company. We could still have fun, watching sports together, talking about life, talking about what's important. And that's something that I'll really miss.
Things I'm going to miss mostly are things that are yet to come. I think for me, sharing my life, particularly as it relates to church with my parents, was important. I remember every meaningful experience I had, called into the bishopric. I'd stop and talk to my parents and stand at the foot of the bed where I've spent half of my life, it seems like, standing at the foot of that bed, telling him about being called to the High Council and being called as a counselor in the stake presidency and then being called as a stake president. Usually the first stop I made was there to talk to my parents, and I knew it would bring great pride, particularly to him, and those were things I think he loved to be part of, and I'll miss being able to share those kinds of experiences and just events and things that happen in my kids' lives. I think that will be something that I'll miss.
I will miss being able to sit down and talk to Grandpa about what's going on, like, in my life. When I would have a day off, I would go over after work and I would take him and Grandma smoothies, and we would just talk about sports and school and all the things that were going on, and it was fun to hear his stories about the experiences that I was having.
I think one of the things I'll miss most is hearing Grandpa call me Chels. I don't think in my entire life I remember him ever calling me by my full name.
I would say the things I'll miss most about Grandpa is the fact that he called me Brooklet. I didn't realize that he called me Brooklet until just recently, actually. It's just been something he's done since I was little, and he never really called me by Brooke. And I remember seeing him for one of the last times, and he called me Brooklet, and it all of a sudden just hit me that he always has called me Brooklet, and I don't know where it came from. I will miss that he called me that and no one else called me by that name.
I'm gonna miss my other Ute fan in the family, and I'm also gonna miss Grandpa's love for music and the times that he asked me to perform for him, and the times that me and Vince got to play or sing for him, even though they were sometimes out of tune and not in the best
Let's
register.
just say I was definitely glad he did not have the best hearing because we were off key by a mile. It was great.
I will miss talking sports, although I don't think he's been able to actually watch a Ute game in years and sit and watch it, so he probably needed us to recap them for him.
We both like to read books, and so lots of times we would discuss books that we had both read, and I enjoyed doing that with him.
I'm definitely gonna miss, no matter what the circumstance was or like how he was feeling, like if he was sick or happy, no matter what, he would always have some stupid or funny or sarcastic comment he had to make.
I will miss your example and your strength.
There's a lot that we'll miss about Grandpa. Seeing the house decorated at Christmas was always fun, and seeing the Christmas village, he always liked to set up at the house, and just going, seeing Grandpa at various family events, and just going and talking with Grandpa is something we'll all miss.
What I'll miss most is he always asked me about my sports. He always asked if I was doing basketball or how I was playing and all that. That's what I'll probably miss the most.
I'll miss listening to him try to tell me about the hilarious commercial he'd just seen on TV and how funny it was, and him trying to get through moments of laughter, having to pause to get through trying to explain to me how hilarious this commercial was that he just saw. We all went through that so many times, and it was always so funny that he found commercials just the best part of his day. But that definitely will stick with me. Those were good times. Those were fun times that I'll always remember. And I'll always remember his concern for his hair. It was a constant, lifelong battle that I believe he won, but he definitely had great hair, and it was a priority to make sure that it stayed that way. I will always think of him when I see Fig Newtons or ginger snaps that were so hard they could break a tooth. I'll think of him every time I see cherry chocolates, or whenever I hear a quote by Hubie Brown. Every time I smell Postum, I will always think of Dad.
Some of the traits that I will take is hard work.
Hard work, finishing a job, doing the best that you can do at everything that you do. He always did that, and I think that I would like to say that I inherited that from him. I've tried to.
Hard work and pride of yard and garden and wanting to have things be just so, a crisp edge to lawn and a finished job.
The first thing I think about is his work ethic. He was always a very hard worker, and it seemed like whether it was in the house or the yard or with city functions or ward functions or whatever he was doing, he gave 110%.
I learned to work hard from my dad. I learned that when the lawnmower started on a Saturday morning, you better be out of bed, or you will be very soon.
Is hard work. He definitely was a hard worker. He taught all of his kids to be hard workers, and that is something that I have definitely inherited from him. And I hope to pass on to my kids is how to work hard, because he definitely knew how to do that.
I think that's what Dad was always known for, is a hard worker, and always worked hard and did things well.
I think one of the things that I got from him through my dad is being a hard worker, trying to put my best into things that I do. I feel like many of us in the family have that sort of trait, and I'm very grateful for him and for all the people that help us be that type of family that works hard and that gets stuff done.
The thing that I inherit from my dad was probably his being a perfectionist. I still mow my lawn both directions every time I mow it. And there's many times doing projects, I'll print things over and over again because one little thing is not aligned perfectly the way I want it. And I still do that a lot.
Something I inherited from him is I always want to have everything perfect. Like he always wanted to have everything perfect, so I inherited that from him.
Something I inherited from him is
a couple summers ago, me and my brother and my dad would mow his lawn, and he was super strict about it because he wanted it perfect. But I think that being strict about it was good, because if he was chill about it, he wouldn't have done it very well, and then he wouldn't really know how to mow the lawn well. And I think that's something that I've learned from him.
He was funny, and I think I got comedy from him. The whole Martin family did. They're all funny. I think that's what I got.
What I inherited from Grandpa, he's funny. Like everyone, Martin family is funny. I think just because of him and Grandma.
Definitely what I've inherited from him is my OCD and my tendency for perfectionism. Unfortunately and fortunately, sometimes it can be good or bad. I also think I inherited my love for animals and gardening, and my fair skin and cankers are other things I inherited that I've also passed on to my kids.
We got good hair. I get cankers. I'm fairly determined. Some would call me stubborn. I'm pretty sure that came from my dad. And I think that's a good trait and a bad trait. Sometimes we're too stubborn for our own good, but we pretty much stick to a task till it's done. I think that I learned from my dad.
Something I think I inherited from him is that he really liked horses, and I really like horses.
Some of the things that I got from my dad that maybe they're not so good is impatience.
Yeah, we might have picked up a touch of sarcasm from Dad as well. But who knows?
The legacy that he left, I think a couple of things. I think he left a legacy of work, a legacy of making your yard and your garden perfect that I'll never be able to live up to. I've tried to step up my game to live up to his standards, and I don't know how he did it. My yard just will never look as good as his does.
I think his legacy, because everyone would know him as like a hard worker. I don't know, every time we'd go over to their house, he'd have a project for us to do.
I think he left a legacy of hard work and dedication to his family.
I think he left a legacy of being someone who always gave, 100% all the time. Never half effort, always 100% or more.
I definitely think he left a good example to others, and was also always a good priesthood holder, and always cherished the gospel, and would always do what the Lord needed him to do.
Hard work. I think he definitely taught my dad hard work, and I think my dad taught us kids how to work hard. And
Grandpa believes behind the legacy of someone who loved and cared for everybody that he came in touch with, whether it was his family or his neighbors or just anybody.
His legacy is shown to me is that how he's in the military, and I think that is really inspiring to me. It's probably helped me to be a better person, better for my country, and better citizen, I guess. And
always stuck by his beliefs and had his principles, and he never let go of those, whether they were popular or not.
A legacy that he left behind is my middle name is Carl, so I got his name for my middle name.
The legacy that he left, I would say, was his kids, mostly, and I'm proud to be one of them, and I think we've done pretty good. I think he's created some pretty good people, and we have too.
A legacy that I think he left is that he was really close to the gospel, and he really tried to be like Heavenly Father and Jesus, and I try to be like him, to be like Heavenly Father and Jesus.
A family that follows the gospel and loves the Lord, and I know a lot of teachings that I could relate here if we had time, of things Dad taught me about the church and the importance of going and having a testimony, and I think I will always remember that.
But ultimately, I think it was his loyalty, and he was loyal to the family. He was a loyal father, husband, provider, and that was a big deal to him. And Dad wasn't great about expressing his feelings. And not that he didn't say he loved me, because he did. He did, and he told me he was proud of me, and he said all those things you want to hear, but the way that he showed his love was that he took care of us, and he protected us, and he guided us, and he taught us what we needed to know. And he was a hard guy. He was hard and critical, and he pushed, and he pushed, and he pushed. And I remember one time when I was upset at the way he had treated me or talked to me about something, and he said, I'm pushing you because I see who you could be.
Also, of course, that leading into his legacy, I think, is the fact that he always knew the gospel was true. We always knew that just wasn't absolute. There were a lot of things in our growing up life that wasn't exactly perfect, and he and I talked a lot in his later years about his experience as a husband and a father, and I don't think he had any illusions to the fact that he was going to win Father of the Year or Husband of the Year anytime soon. I know he had misgivings, and appropriately so, about some of his methods of raising kids and his relationship with Mom, but I always knew where he stood with the gospel. He knew he had expectations for us as to how we ought to embrace the gospel. His testimony was solid and strong, and that I inherited as well, and it's a legacy he'll have and has had in my life and has passed on to my children. No one could ever question or wonder where his allegiances were.
A legacy of sacrifice for the gospel, and I just think of, when he served a mission, or as a couple, when they served a mission. Obviously that's not a convenient time. It's never a convenient time. There's things that they had to miss. But the sacrifice and the impact that you make, that they made on our kids, and I'm sure other kids, about what's really important in life, is something that I will always remember.
As far as a legacy, I think the thing that comes to mind the most is just his testimony of the gospel. He's never ever doubted or had any ounce of disbelief when it comes to the gospel or his testimony. He's always, some of my favorite things about him was anytime I had a question or was trying to find a scripture reference or a conference talk, if I went and asked him, he knew immediately where it was and how to find it, and would go on and on and on and tell me all the things that pertain to that specific question and how I could learn more about it, and all the things that he knew. That was something that I always knew he was there. If I ever had a question or was needing help with a talk or anything, he was so knowledgeable about the gospel. And I think as a legacy, he left that as far as he was concerned, there was no doubt in his mind about the gospel of Jesus Christ.
I'm really thankful for Grandpa and for the 23 years I've gotten to spend with him and learn from him and grow my testimony from him. And we love him, and we're excited for the reunion we'll all have someday.
His testimony was one of those things that was reliable and was absolute, and it is a great blessing and a legacy for all of us.
Yeah, we'll miss him.
We sure do love you, and we love Grandpa, and we will miss him.
I'll miss him very much, and he's always in my thoughts.
We love you, Grandpa. We'll miss you.
Love you, Grandpa.
Love you, Grandpa.
We'll miss him.
Love you, Dad, and gonna miss our talks.
I'm proud to be a son. I'm proud of what I learned from him. I'll miss him.
I love you, Dad. I'll miss you. I hope you're having a wonderful reunion, and we'll see you again someday.
Love you, Dad.